The heavy scent of incense filled the air as the dusk settled over Benin City. The streets hummed with life, vendors haggling, children chasing each other down narrow alleys, and the distant sound of drums echoing from a nearby gathering. Oluwatoyin walked along the familiar path towards her husband's house, her mind weighed down by 1,000 unspoken thoughts. Her marriage to Osei had once been the talk of the city, an enviable union between two people who seemed to have it all. Osei was prosperous, known for his sharp business acumen and his towering presence in the community. But the same presence that had once swept her off her feet now felt like a shadow hanging over her. He was distant, preoccupied with his expanding business empire, and indifferent to her needs. The passion that had once defined their relationship had slowly dimmed, like the setting sun disappearing behind the thick clouds. Her heart ached as she thought of the old days, the days when their laughter filled the house and his hands would linger on hers, just for the sake of holding on. Now, their interactions were stiff, mechanical, as though they were mere strangers bound by obligation. "Are you home, Osei?" she called softly as she stepped into their home. The house, once filled with warmth, now seemed cold and uninviting. There was no answer. She walked deeper into the house, her eyes scanning the room, her heartbeat quickening as she noticed the empty glass of wine on the table. He had been drinking again. As she passed the bedroom, she caught a glimpse of him through the cracked door. Osei was lying on the bed, his face turned toward the wall, eyes closed as though he were asleep. But Oluwatoyin knew better. He had been distant for months now, his silence louder than words. "Why are you so quiet these days?" she whispered to herself, as though speaking aloud would break the heavy silence in her heart. She turned away, retreating to the kitchen to prepare his evening meal. But as she entered the room, her eyes caught the reflection in the dark window. The moon was full, its light bathing the city in an eerie glow, and for a brief moment, her mind wandered elsewhere, away from the cold marriage she was bound to, away from the loveless life she had come to accept. It was a longing that she couldn't quiet, a yearning for something, someone, who might make her feel alive again. The next day, everything changed. It began with a chance meeting in the marketplace. Oluwatoyin had gone there to buy spices for dinner when she noticed him, Emeka, standing under the wide canopy of an old tree, a figure who seemed to belong to both the present and the past. His presence was magnetic, as though the world around him slowed in recognition of his being. Emeka was tall, with broad shoulders that hinted at strength, yet his eyes, dark and mysterious, spoke of something deeper, something untold. He wasn't a stranger. Oluwatoyin had heard whispers of him before, stories of a healer with a reputation for weaving magic into his remedies, a man who had lived on the fringes of the city, away from the noise of urban life. But there was something about him, something that caught her breath, that made her stop and look. For a moment, their gazes locked, and time seemed to stretch. Her pulse quickened. She felt the stirring of something that had been buried deep within her for too long. "Good day, madam," Emeka said with a calm, confident voice that matched the calm aura surrounding him. Oluwatoyin nodded, her mouth dry, unsure of what to say. She could feel the heat rise to her cheeks as she struggled to find her words. The world around them seemed to fade into the background, as though only they existed in that moment. "I'm Emeka," he said, extending a hand. "You look like someone in need of a remedy." Her eyes flickered from his hand to his face. There was a warmth in his smile, an unspoken promise, and she felt drawn to him, even though she knew it was reckless to feel anything. Yet, something about him was undeniable. I don't need any remedies," she stammered, pulling her hand back. But as soon as she did, she felt a pang of regret. His smile didn't fade though. "No. Maybe not today, but there's always something ailing our hearts, madam. Even in a city like this." She found herself nodding, her thoughts scattering. "My name is Oluwatoyin," she replied. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Pleasure is mine, Oluwatoyin," Emeka said, his voice low and rich, like a secret waiting to be told. They exchanged a few more words, nothing of particular importance. But as she walked away from the marketplace, the thought of Emeka lingered. His eyes followed her, she was sure of it. And with that glance, something had shifted in her heart, something she wasn't prepared for. In the days that followed, Oluwatoyin could not shake the memory of Emeka. Every time she closed her eyes, his face was there, burning bright against the darkness of her thoughts. She found herself returning to the marketplace, hoping to cross his path once again. Each time, he was there, watching her from afar, and each time, the connection between them deepened, drawing her closer to him in ways that felt both thrilling and dangerous. Oluwatoyin began to question the life she had built with Osei. The distance between them seemed insurmountable, and the longing she felt for Emeka began to consume her. She couldn't stop thinking about him. His presence, his words, his touch, it was as if they had always known each other. One evening, unable to control the pull any longer, she sought him out. She found him at the edge of the city, standing by a river that shimmered under the stars. It was here, in the stillness of the night, that Emeka spoke the words that would change everything. "Oluwatoyin, I know what you're searching for. It's not just love you crave, but freedom. Freedom from a life that binds you. You're not truly living." Her heart raced as she stood before him, every word he spoke sinking deep into her soul. "Let me show you a different way, a path that will lead you to the love you seek. But beware, for it will cost you." The promise in his words was too much to ignore. The heat in her chest, the yearning in her veins, was stronger than the fear that rose in her throat. "I will do anything," she whispered, a part of her knowing the gravity of what she was saying, but too desperate to care. Emeka smiled, but it was a smile that held the weight of unspoken secrets. "Then come with me." The night was heavy with the scent of earth and damp leaves as Oluwatoyin followed Emeka through the quiet, winding paths that led beyond the city. The moon hung low in the sky, casting its pale light across the landscape. Emeka moved ahead with purpose, his silhouette barely visible in the shadows. "I hope you understand what you're about to do," he said without turning around. Oluwatoyin nodded, her heart beating faster with every step. "I understand. But I don't know if I'm ready to let go of my life, my marriage." Emeka stopped and turned to face her. His gaze was intense, almost piercing. "You're not letting go of anything, you're only rediscovering a part of yourself you've neglected. A part of you that has always been there, waiting." The words hung in the air, making her feel both alive and terrified. She had always known there was more to life than what she had, but the unknown was a heavy thing to carry. Yet, as she looked at Emeka, his calm demeanor felt like an anchor, pulling her deeper into something she didn't fully understand. They arrived at his home, a small, modest hut nestled between tall trees and overgrown vines. There was a sense of serenity about it, as though the land itself was sacred. Emeka led her inside, where the air was thick with the scent of burning incense and herbs. "This is where I work," he said softly, motioning to the dimly lit room filled with shelves of vials, bowls of dried herbs, and stones that shimmered faintly in the low light. "And this is where you will find the answer to your heart's deepest desire." Oluwatoyin looked around, mesmerized. It was like stepping into a different world, one that seemed to exist outside of time, untouched by the world's chaos. Emeka moved to a small altar in the corner, where a wooden figure of a woman stood. She was holding a bowl in one hand and a staff in the other, her face serene and yet filled with power. The figure was carved with such intricate detail that it felt alive. "This is Onia, the goddess of love and protection," Emeka said, his voice reverent. She watches over those who seek true love, but she does not give without demanding something in return. Oluwatoyin swallowed hard. What do I have to give? A piece of your soul, Emeka answered, his gaze softening. Love, when sought in the deepest corners of the heart, is never free. But it is worth the price. Oluwatoyin hesitated, her mind racing with thoughts of Osei, of the life she had built. Was she truly willing to lose herself in this? Yet, the pull she felt for Emeka was undeniable. In his presence, she felt seen, as though for the first time, she was more than just a wife or a daughter. She was a woman with desires, with the power to change her own fate. I'm ready, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Emeka smiled. Good. Let us begin. He handed her a small vial filled with golden liquid. Drink this, he instructed, and speak your wish aloud. Then, you will see the truth of what you seek. Oluwatoyin took the vial, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. She unscrewed the lid and drank the liquid in one swift motion. A warmth spread through her chest, and for a brief moment, she felt a surge of clarity, like she was connected to something ancient, something deep within the earth itself. Now speak, Emeka said, his voice soft but insistent. Oluwatoyin closed her eyes and whispered into the stillness of the room. I want Emeka's love. I want him to see only me, to desire only me. I want him to belong to me. The words left her lips like a prayer, and she felt them echo in her bones. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of her heartbeat, the rustling of the leaves outside, and the presence of Emeka in the room with her. Then, a soft wind blew through the hut, and the air shifted. The faint scent of herbs grew stronger, almost overpowering, and she felt something stir within her chest, a deep, almost unexplainable feeling of power. She opened her eyes to see Emeka watching her, his face unreadable. You have made your wish, he said, his voice low. But be warned, the path you've chosen is not without consequence. Oluwatoyin nodded, not fully understanding the weight of his words, but feeling an unsettling truth in them. The next few days passed in a blur. Emeka's presence seemed to haunt her thoughts, and she found herself unable to concentrate on anything other than him. The longing in her chest intensified with each passing hour. Osei, meanwhile, continued his oblivious routine. He came and went, his attention focused on his business, as always. It was clear to Oluwatoyin now that the love she had once shared with him was gone, buried beneath years of neglect and indifference. One evening, just as the sun was setting, Emeka appeared at her doorstep. He stood in the shadows, waiting for her to notice him. When she did, her heart skipped a beat. Oluwatoyin, he said, his voice as smooth as honey. I've come to check on you, to see how you are. Without a word, she stepped toward him, her heart pounding in her chest. Their hands brushed lightly, and she felt a shock of electricity course through her body. It was the beginning of something she could no longer ignore. They talked for hours that night, sharing their hopes and fears, their desires and regrets. Every word they exchanged drew them closer, until finally, Emeka leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle at first, a tentative touch of lips, but soon, it deepened, becoming urgent, passionate. In that kiss, she felt every piece of herself fall into place, like she was finally being seen, truly seen for the first time in years. But as the kiss ended, Emeka pulled away, his eyes dark with something more than desire. You should be careful, he warned. This is not just about love. There are forces at work here, forces that will not let you go so easily. Meanwhile, back in the heart of Benin City, Osei began to sense the change in his wife. He noticed how distant she had become, how she no longer looked at him with the same affection she once had. Suspicion began to creep into his thoughts, and his jealousy grew. He could no longer ignore the fact that something had shifted between them. But he was a man of pride, and rather than confronting her directly, he began to find solace in the arms of other women. Women who seemed eager to give him the affection that Oluwatoyin no longer offered. Oluwatoyin was unaware of Osei's actions, but she could feel the tension building. Emeka had become her world, and she no longer cared for the consequences of her actions. But little did she know, the spiritual forces she had sought to control were now beginning to take their toll. In the days to come, she would discover that love was not the only thing that had been awakened that night in Emeka's hut. The gods, too, had heard her wish. And they were not so easily fooled.